Flacco's back. Travis Hunter ultimatums. And just 10 days till the draft, baby. Now on the React. Welcome to the OBR streaming network. This is the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Good to see you filing in the chat. Just 10 days until the draft. Draft Cave 2025. We're going to have wall-to-wall coverage from pick 1 till the very end. Covered all for you here on the OBR streaming network. So make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way in or out. What is going on, Pete?
We're at that point in the calendar where, and this happens every year, the draft is 1 week too far away from when it should be. There's always an extra week that doesn't need to be there. In this case, if you're a Cleveland fan, if the draft was Thursday, it would clean up right before the Cavs start the playoffs. So you'd have that going for you. But in any case, we're here and we're working, and we'll see what happens in another week and a half.
Couple questions regarding, just to throw at you here off the top. It's 10 days, 9 days, whatever it is, away a week from Thursday. So, interestingly enough, what do you think about the Giants in this last second workout with Shedeur? It's kind of strange, right? Like a week before the draft, they're going to work him out one more time. Then they have like everybody at his pro day too and everything. Like, why are they doing this?
It is a little bit strange. They're also working out Tyler Shuck and I think Jalen Milroe as well. So
at the same time?
I'm sure. No, because you have to go to each.
Oh yeah, you got to go to Boulder. Yeah.
It's bizarre to me. I thought initially when it was just Shedeur, I thought perhaps they were trying to decide if they wanted to make one big last push for Cam Ward. Having seen that it's 3, I'm wondering if they already made one last big push for Cam Ward and it failed. And now they're sitting there going, oh, crap, we actually have to do something else. And now we're sitting there going, we've got to figure out what we're going to do. It's probably not going to be a 3, almost certainly not going to be a 3, especially when you include Milroe and Shuck. So trying to get as much information as possible. This might involve ownership to some degree. I mean, nothing about this from a process standpoint from the Giants looks, I would say, orderly. It to me, it looks slapped together a little bit and chaotic, and it's probably not going over terribly well with that fan base. But ultimately, it's not going to matter if they get it right. We'll see what happens when they actually are on the clock.
I saw the Browns had Tet McMillan in for a visit. They've had Mason Graham in. They've had Will Campbell in. Is there anything to read into that, or is it just due diligence?
Well, it is due diligence, but also if somebody was to shock you with an offer and say, we're going to give you, a first-round pick next year and a second-round pick this year and other things to come up to 2, and the Browns are inclined to take it, they can't just get to that pick, whatever it is, and be completely flat-footed. I mean, the suggestion has been that they would take, if they were to move still down to the top 10, I would be stunned if they were to then select somebody that they hadn't brought in for a visit. I would. It's still so early that you want to make sure you've done all the homework. So I think that's more than anything to give them some insight into the possibility of, well, what happens if we're blown away with an offer? Then what will we do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Man, at this point, I just can't imagine them trading down without it being involving a first in 26.
Well, not only that, I just don't think it's going to happen. I've been dubious this whole time because you have, to your point, you have to get something that is worth either Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, and that would include at least a first round pick next year. You're not trading down from 2 to move down to like 6th and getting an extra 3rd round pick. It's just not worth it. I mean, you keep hearing from people who are coming out now saying basically the difference in the talent between picks like 4 or 5, depending on where Hunter and Carter go, to like 17 is basically flat. So you've traded out. You would have traded out and then gotten sort of equivalent talent to a whole flat area, which is just, to me, a disaster unless you get that Godfather offer that says, no, this is so much, I cannot say no.
Yeah, unless, I mean, we've talked about this a lot. In every decision around this draft, you have to consider any implications on potentially gaining your franchise quarterback. And I think that's the only way that moves you off of 2 is if you get an offer from a team that you think is going to be or has a chance to be poor, and you get a first back from them, and then ultimately you're a step closer to potentially getting that franchise quarterback if you believe that he's going to be there like next year.
Right. So it'd be like if the Titans traded down with the Giants, and the Titans are not only getting huge trade package, but they're all sitting there going, yeah, we're pretty confident the Giants are still going to finish last in that division. So we feel really good about where that pick's going to land. Some of these teams you might not be as sure, but again, I don't think it's going to happen. I think ultimately the Browns are going to be stuck. And I say that they're going to be able to pick the best player in the draft, and they should.
Since we left the airwaves last week, the Browns added Flacco and another player today. So we'll address both of those as we go through. But I want to start off the top here by just saying, we're just about a week out. We'll have one more show here before the draft, but any sway for you on, we talked about last week, the Hunter buzz. It's certainly getting louder. I listened to McShay's report, and he is just out of his mind right now. He's talking so fast, and it's wild. He's just talking out so fast, and ideas and people he's talked to and all this stuff. But one of the things he keeps saying is the Browns are taking Hunter. The Browns are taking Hunter. He's heard it. Do you move? Have you budged off of the idea that they will take Carter at 2?
No, I mean, to my knowledge, I mean, as far as I know, the Browns still have not yet decided on who they're going to pick. That is happening this week. So what Todd McShay is talking to other teams and asking what they think or whoever, because if he's asking the Browns, they don't know yet. So it doesn't really mean much to me at this point. Both guys are certainly in the conversation. It's those two. I still think ultimately Carter, for a variety of reasons, history says take the edge rusher. Just in terms of the value of the position and the scarcity that is involved there. I think the completeness of production profile, athletic profile, all those things are work in his favor. He's younger. There are fewer considerations to make with Abdul Carter in the sense that you know exactly what he is the second he walks in the door. You're not thinking about, well, is he going to play offense? He's going to play defense or anything else. He's primarily going to be killing the quarterback and maybe doing some linebacker things, but ultimately he's there to upgrade your defense. So we'll see. It certainly wouldn't be shocking for them to take Travis Hunter. It's just a question of what will be, if that's the move, what's the plan? How do they view it? And where does that go? But nothing has changed in terms of how football games are won. Nothing has changed in terms of where Andrew Berry gets most of his, sort of philosophy from, which is a lot of it comes from the guy in Philadelphia, Howie Roseman. So I've yet to see a compelling reason to go the other way. But, the most I can say is I think they will take Abdul Carter. I believe he's the best pick. The Browns may disagree on both counts.
Okay. Speaking of Hunter, and this will lead us to our first video. He said today, which to your point complicates things even further, or I don't know if he said it today or when he said it exactly, but he won't play football at all if an NFL team tries to limit him to one side of the ball. And then went on to say no team has expressed any issues with him playing both cornerback and wide receiver. I think me and you both have an issue with that, at least to start with. I do, certainly.
Yep.
And that, kind of brings about the exact issues you were just talking about. If you were somebody that was pushing back against the idea that they're going to take Hunter, certainly don't want to hear that. Let's watch our first video here and we'll talk about it more. Courtesy of 92.3.
I'm absolutely paraphrasing here, but basically that he'd rather stop playing than just play one position in the NFL. Service value. I love that the dude loves football so much that he is committed to this idea. But the idea of him doing it in the pros is very much an ego idea.
Yes.
This isn't, I like to compete. All right. It's not, I love football so much. It is, I want the Bo Jackson of it. You don't have to. They're not going to pay you more to do it. And if you only want to do it because I get to say that I did something you don't, it's not worth potentially 4 to 5 to 6 years of your career, because it is fact that every single snap you take on any given year takes from a snap in the future.
And the other thing that I look at this too is, it's for somebody like him, it's going to be about that second contract. Because you're going to make what you're going to make being selected second or third overall. But that second contract in the NFL is where you can make a lot of money. And both of those positions are positions, corner and wide receiver, that it is a premium spot on the field. But is there a team? Because if he plays both ways, I think it's fair to expect he might not be elite at either.
I don't know about that. Here's what, real quickly from our chat, you need to hear the Hunter audio. The quote is somewhat deceiving. He is asked to never play again or play one position. So, yeah, I mean, I'll have to seek that out. If that's if the audio is taken out of context in some way. Regardless, it is an issue that he's even saying that he wants to play both ways. Like, I would just say, as we've talked about, I view him as a wide receiver first. And if you're going to draft him at 2, I want him to prove that he's an elite wide receiver before he does anything else, if you're going to take him.
Right. So that's certainly where I'm at, wide receiver first, and he needs to be fantastic at it before we start talking about playing both ways.
Yes.
You know, I'd love to know more context on this if there's more to it, because if he's saying I'm only going to play corner, that's an issue, because, you know, I've raised the idea of playing a different position on defense that could allow him to sort of be a package player, and takes away the one thing that I have watched him suck at since he entered college, was just tackling. He's awful. He went to the Denzel Ward School of Tackling. He just throws his head in the way. He doesn't use his arms. It's bad. And like, this is the NFL, and it's a problem. He's got some functional strength issues as a corner. He cannot, his punch is worthless. So if you're actually asking him to press or reroute, he can't do it. And he's going to be doing it against guys who are much bigger and stronger than him, and they're going to shove him out of the way. He needs to play, if he's going to play a heavy man scheme, he needs to play like Ward does. Tight, but not asking him to get hands on, because that's not what he is. He's got exceptional mirror and movement skills. He's got great ball skills. His eyes are excellent. Those are all positives. But you've got to be able to put the guy on the ground. And he doesn't do it. And he does it in a way where I worry about some of the things you get with Denzel Ward, where he's going to hurt himself in the process. And if he hurts himself because he's a terrible tackler, or, you know, does the other thing where he just will sort of not make great effort in pursuit as a tackler and give up points, then it doesn't help him. So those are some of the issues I have with it. I do think there's an element which I find annoying in the sense that even though it's entirely a product of where we are in sort of sports, which is this notion of branding. He is branding himself, and they sort of brought it up in the clip, of being a two-way guy. He's in a national commercial for being a two-way guy. That doesn't win me more football games. And that's, I understand he's a sensational talent. He is genuinely a unique player in what he's able to do. But when we talk about draft picks and stuff, and people talk about whether it's quarterback or edge rusher, all these, we sit here going, how do we guarantee they're going to be great at the one thing they are trying to do? And I feel like in some ways we are putting the cart before, some people are putting the cart before the horse, and we're skipping right past where he gets really, really good at one thing, and we're talking about how does he get really, really good at two? Yeah. And that's an extraordinarily difficult task. We have so many players, especially in Cleveland, we've seen come through this team, this city, who couldn't get the one position right. And we're sitting there going, oh, this will be no problem for him to be great at both. And it's just, it doesn't work. And he missed 13 games in college. Out of the 40 he played, they were all at Jackson State. I get it. So there's this out of sight, out of mind thing. But like, if he pulls a hamstring in training camp trying to go both ways, the amount of people who are going to be up in arms going, well, why were we doing this? Why were, even if whether it's an injury, whether it's he's not doing well enough, things that could be entirely a product of just being a rookie trying to get used to the NFL, mistakes that anyone would make, it's going to be looked through this lens of, well, why are they, we're second guessing it. Why are they asking him to go both ways? How much are they asking him to practice? This, that, and the other. Everything's going to opens itself up to then be able to be picked apart, and everybody's going to tell it, unless he's great at both things, how the team is doing it wrong. And if he gets beat on Sunday because he's playing corner, because he's, whether we blame it on fatigue or whatever, the novelty will wear off very quickly if he starts losing you football games, or he drops a ball or whatever, and we go, well, he shouldn't be going two ways or whatever, or he's distracted because he's going two ways, or whatever line of crap we will come up with to be unhappy about the fact he's playing two ways if he's not great at everything. It's awesome if he can do it, and more power to him. But this is not Colorado, where they're retiring his jersey because the football program has been garbage for so long that they're saying, screw it. A quarterback who won 13 games is going to get his jersey retired.
Yeah.
It's the NFL. Like you're the Browns, and you're sitting here going, we need this guy to win us football games.
Yes.
That's got to be the focus. And that's where you sit here and you can talk yourself and be very annoyed. And if you're sitting here and you're the Browns and you're sitting here going, I got these two prospects that are so close, and you're sitting here going, what's the tiebreaker? To me, unless you have, obviously they've talked to Travis Hunter at length about these things. So they're going to have whatever context is not there. But if they get the sense of, well, he's more worried about Travis, the business, than Travis, how he's going to make the Browns better, then I'm going to shift and go, the tiebreaker to me is Abdul Carter.
Yeah. For me, he's exceptional. He's amazing. I think he can be an amazing wide receiver. I think he can be one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. But he's not there yet. He's not a finished product on that side of the ball. He still needs a ton of polish on that side of the ball. And ultimately, you can't just walk into camp and start playing two positions and expect that polish just to come, right? If you're going to take him to be an offensive weapon, then he needs to focus on being that offensive weapon. Ultimately, this creates a problem. And for me, you begin to question, if you're going to take him, you better damn well have had this conversation to the point that you have made already. But even further, you better have damn well had the conversation with him. And he better know that coming in, this is your job to be wide receiver, to learn this route tree, to expand your route tree, to understand all of the things, the nuances of playing the position, so that you're, the gifts you take the gifts that you've been given athletically and turn them into your ceiling at that position before we even talk about you playing a position on the other side of the field. Because ultimately, I didn't take you at 2. At least in my opinion, you'd be crazy to take him at 2 because he's a two-way player. You take him at 2 because he's a generational athlete and he has incredible twitch and all of these things. Speaking of which, I wanted to ask you about the most hyperbolic. Did you hear Mel Kiper's quote on him?
What, saying he's the second best player he's graded since John Elway?
John Elway. We're getting a little wild, aren't we?
I mean, again, to the extent that you are, actually grading out somebody who's playing both positions, it's gonna incline you to grade him super high. The problem is it doesn't take into the context of human frailty or any other problems that a player could run into. Yeah, this worked really well against the Big 12. It didn't work so well against, when he got absolutely torched for 200 and something odd yards against A.U. Manor against Stanford. So that's the problem. And again, he can do that. And maybe there's a world where he's effective on both sides of the ball in the NFL, but the level of difficulty, the hyper specialization that so many players go through is insane. The amount of training look, you look at a guy like Elijah Moore, who and the obsessive amount of training he puts in just to be a wide receiver, and he's pretty average at it. And granted, Travis Hunter may just be that much more naturally gifted than Moore is, but that's the level some of these guys are putting into it, and he can work as hard as he wants. There are only so many hours in the day. There's only so much he can put on his own body. I mean, Colorado didn't practice much. These are all things that you have to sort of really account for. And the other thing is one of the main arguments I heard for the longest time, and I don't, I'm not assuming it's stopped, is one of the biggest reasons you have to take Travis Hunter is because your offense is so bad. Well, if my offense is so bad, then why am I worried about what he can do on defense at all right now? I want to worry about, if that's the case you're trying to make to me, that the offense needs him, the offense needs to get better, that we need to score more points, then defense is the least of my considerations at this point. I'm worried about what he can do in terms of offense. I want him to be the best receiver possible. I want him to go out and get 1,200 yards as a rookie, however unrealistic that may be. I want him to score 10 touchdowns. That is what I'm looking for when I use the second pick of the draft on that player. In the same way that if the Browns take Abdul Carter, I'm sitting there going, where's my 10 sacks? Where's my, where's the closer that I saw at Penn State? Those are the expectations you have. So if we're dealing with this whole thing where, every press conference, not from him necessarily, but from the team in some sort of form or fashion, is excuses about, well, he's doing A, B, and C. Nobody wants to hear that. All they want to see is him to be great and score points. And these just invite problems that ultimately he may be able to overcome. But if he doesn't, it's a mess, and it can just become such a huge distraction for a team that doesn't need anything like that.
If he will commit to playing wide receiver, I very much am interested, because I think he can be incredible. But if he's going to have this issue where he walks in the door and it's going to be an issue from day one, then that's, like I said, it's something that has to be ironed out before you even take the card up to the podium.
Absolutely. There has to be a clear understanding. And for all we know, the Browns are entirely comfortable with what he said to them. I have no idea. I do know that this has been a conversation for the Browns. They've been thinking about this already, the idea of knowing this was what he wants to do and how they would sort of look at it. What conclusion are they going to come to? I don't know, but they're at least having those conversations about whether or not this is going to, how far they want to go with this thing. And, are we sure that he's going to be able to beat out, the guys they have in there at corner, I don't know. And it may the situation may sort itself out real fast if he's, corner 4, to start the season or whatever. But still, it's just one more thing. I would love nothing more for and obviously he says this and he's drafted, is to say, listen, I'm going to do everything in my power to prove that you should play me on both sides of the ball, rather than, and again, if it's taken out of context, then it's taken out of context, but to suggest that, you're introducing the word quit before we've even, started, you're even on the team, whatever team it is, the idea of I won't play. Well, listen, I just went through 3 years with a quarterback who quit on the team, straight up quit on the team. I'm not interested in that stuff. And just from a competitive nature standpoint of, I'm about to hand you $40 million. Don't tell me what you're not going to do. I want to hear what you're going to do for the team. And that's where, and it may be a product of the way he was asked or whatever else. But when the thing I hear is, I'm not, I'm going to quit or I'm not going to play, then I'm sitting here going, okay, this has already been introduced to the conversation. Where's it next going to be? Well, I wasn't given, are we going to be back at this and go, well, I wasn't given what I feel was a fair enough shot on both sides of the ball, or I'm not getting enough reps on both sides of the ball. And then it becomes sort of thing. And I don't, Travis Hunter may be, great as a kid and everything else. I have no idea beyond what we've sort of seen publicly, but given what we've already just experienced this past week with Deion Sanders and his nonsense with Louis Riddick, it's one more reason to be worried about that element, as well as Deion claims him as his son.
I know, but there's
at points in this draft process said, I will approve the plan for the team that wants to draft him.
That goes away, I think, somewhat once he's drafted and all of my, I don't know. I'm not so much worried about that because he hasn't been as bad until recently. And it was more of Louis Riddick than anything. I mean, Shedeur was like, I've never even spoken to him before. So,
and here's the thing that happened. Not days later, it may have been like 2 days, Louis Riddick suddenly posts a tweet about the Saints at 9, and then almost immediately, Deion Sanders quote tweets him with the eye emoji. I don't care if Shedeur's ever talked to him, because the guy I'm worried about is the guy who was talking to him at Pro Day, and we know this. Mary Case literally watched them speak together. They have been close since 1992. Shedeur is irrelevant. I said at the time when I went on with Barry and Fred, I feel bad for Shedeur in this case because he's being hurt by people who are not him. Adult,
100%.
And this reminds me of and I've seen this happen where parents of a kid screw up a college opportunity because the parents, you're potentially watching this and who knows what the truth is yet. We're hearing very much the Tennessee side of the story as far as Nico goes, but the implication is that the father is the one with the handout heavily, and he's the one who's sort of driving this thing and causing problems for the kid more than anything. So if that is the case for Shedeur, I feel awful for him because he's potentially getting damaged by people that are not going to be in the building, but just by their presence can be negative for him.
Yeah, 100%. Philly, world's fastest. You guys, I 100% am. I mean, I'm kind of in a place where I'm happy with either guy. This is the reason I'm talking about this is concerning because he spoke out about this. Not to rehash this pick over and over again, but it's kind of a big deal. So, who they take there, and that. To your question, world's fastest, what if the Browns want him to play on both sides of the ball? I've seen nothing that would indicate they would only allow him to play one side of the ball. I'm saying that they should only allow him to play one side of the ball first. I think it's crazy to think that he can just walk out there and do both right away. I think that if you think that, that's wild. But either way, I'm interested in him as a player, certainly, and I think he could help their offense. But I want him to be a wide receiver primarily, first and foremost, because I think he could be a special one. And if you're going to take him at 2, that's what I'm taking him as, a wide receiver. And the fact that he's saying this now is just kind of it's worrisome if you think that the Browns are in on him, which a lot of people are reporting. So it was worth talking about. You're watching The React. My name is Brad Ward. That's Pete Smith. The Browns signed an edge rusher, Julian Okwara.
Yep.
We'll watch this video real quick here, courtesy of Chat Sports.
So the Browns have made a signing just a week before the NFL draft, and I think this could have a little bit of implications for what the Browns do in the upcoming draft. But before we begin breaking all this down, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I want to get 82 more subs as we continue to build our channel and chip away at the overall goal of getting to nearly 50,000 by the time the NFL draft is over with. But let's get to know the latest member of the Cleveland Browns roster. It is Julian Okwara. He was a third-round draft pick out of Notre Dame by the Detroit Lions back in 2020. He's actually from the UK, born in London, England. So a little of international flair, a little beans for breakfast coming over to Cleveland. Last year, though, he was with the Arizona Cardinals. He was with the Lions, does not stick around for too long, goes to the Eagles just for their practice squad, then goes over to Arizona, now in Cleveland, but with the Cardinals a year ago, appeared in 13 games. He started one of them. I mean, the numbers don't really jump out to you a whole lot. He's got 10 career sacks, I think it is, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you can see what he did up in Detroit for 4 seasons, where he started his career off as, a promising type of draft pick. Round 3, I think expectations are always going to be on the higher end for guys taken 1 through 3 in the NFL draft. Now, the last few seasons, he's shown some glimpses on special teams. You can look at his snap counts on the right between Arizona and Detroit, the only 2 places he has seen the regular season field. But 3 out of the last 4 years, he has played well over 200 defensive snaps. So I'm not convinced this is a 90th guy on the roster type signing. Now, when we look at the Browns' defensive line, you're at a pretty good spot at defensive end. We actually ran out of room for him, so he has to go all the way down to the bottom of the depth chart. But Cleveland now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish defensive ends, depending on what you want to call some player. Maybe Kamara could be looked at as one. But regardless, you're very deep and you're very loaded at that position. So the initial reaction by a lot of people with this Okwara signing is, oh, the Browns are good at defensive end. They're not going to go with, say, Abdul Carter in round 1 of the draft. Maybe. Are we really going to believe that the Browns' number 2 overall draft pick hinges on a player that you and I had never heard of before this video? I don't think so. My money is on the Browns saw either 2 things. 1, a good player at a cornerstone position that they wanted to bring in as OTAs and offseason workouts begin ramping up. 2, maybe this is unfortunately a clue of an injury at that position as players start returning back to Cleveland for organized team activities. And the Browns are like, well, we're short a defensive end or 2, so let's sign someone off the street. And, oh, this guy's got 10 career sacks and a former third-round draft pick. Sure, probably one of the best opportunities we're going to have right now. So, no, I do not believe the Browns' pick at number 2 hinges on this Julian guy. He's going to have a monster year for us. To hell with Abdul Carter and his 12 sacks and generational speed and athleticism at points. We're all in on Julian Okwara. So I'm going to pull back a little bit on, the cat's out of the bag. Browns aren't going with Carter anymore at number 2. Don't you know there's a guy from the UK on the roster? So if that is the case, maybe the Browns pass on Carter for like Travis Hunter. And I don't think it's related to this free agent signing. But it's still fun when you see a move made really at any point in the offseason. But a week and change before the NFL draft, yeah, fair to say that there may be some level of a connection here.
All right, that's enough. Just a little breakdown on him. What do we know about Okwara? And I mean, there's already like a log jam at this position. I'm sure he's just a camp body or whatever. To Jeff's point in the chat, but what do we know here?
Romeo's little brother, third-round pick, had 5 sacks his second year with the Lions and has done basically nothing since, other than do some special teams work and be depth. Arizona had a terrible pass rush last year, and he still couldn't really crack the lineup. So special teams is his best opportunity. For him, he's hoping to – obviously, he'd like to make the 53, but ultimately I think more likely he's a guy that the Browns try to get to the practice squad. And if they're short and they need somebody who can contribute on special teams, you can call him a defensive lineman, but really he's just sort of a special teams guy that comes in and you know, that type of stuff. But no, he has no impact on anything the Browns are going to do in the draft. Hell, Joe Flacco doesn't have an impact on anything the Browns are doing in the draft. So certainly Okwara will not.
Yeah. Which brings us to Flacco. We have not gotten a chance to talk about it yet. The chat wants to talk about it. We mentioned it a while back. We had, you know, this was probably the other possibility. If you're not going to go Cousins, I'll ask you more about that in a minute, but I'll get this video up. Initial reaction, signing of Flacco before the draft makes a lot of sense. Not that it affects you in the draft anyways, but you do feel, at least I feel better as somebody who, you know, has been ridiculed for freaking out about the quarterback room every week on this network. I feel better having a, you know, I don't know if you'd call him bona fide, but a legitimate starter, I guess, you know, at least for like half the season in your room. Really just anybody besides Kenny Pickett, and bring that Flacco magic back here. And I feel a little bit better about the room heading into the draft, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, look, was Joe Flacco the best move they could make this offseason? No, I don't think anyone's going to try to sell you on that. But and no, it's not going to impact what the Browns do in the draft. The Browns were going to do what they were going to do. Having said that, Joe Flacco makes you feel more confident in doing what you were going to do, which was never take a quarterback at 2. There are still people holding on to this dream that they're going to do that. Joe Flacco should be the death of that, but it's a good move on a lot of fronts. Not a great move, a good move on a lot of fronts. First, he has credibility in the locker room. He has credibility because he's been in the league as long as he has, but he has credibility because he's been successful here. There are guys in the locker room who immediately go, hey, we were able to do X here. We were able to win football games. We were able to score points. David Njoku, I had my best run. Obviously, Deshaun Watson was part of it, but I played really well when Joe Flacco was here. The Browns offense, even, you know, people talk about how bad the offense was last year. It was better in 2023, in part because Flacco gave them a passing game that they otherwise did not have. So those are certainly valuable. He is valuable as a mentor type in terms of getting a rookie quarterback. He doesn't need to take a guy, you know, put his arm around a young quarterback and do the whole thing. But look, he's 40 years old and he's still in the league. So if you're a rookie quarterback coming into the league, you sit there, and I don't care how much, you know, if you grew up rooting for Joe Flacco or not, part of you is sitting there going, man, I hope I can play in the NFL as long as Joe Flacco has. And being able to just sit there and go, how did he do it? And look, this will sound super get off my lawn-ish, which is fine. Joe Flacco is not worried about doing a podcast. Joe Flacco is not worried about posting workout videos. Joe Flacco is worried about doing what he has to do for the best, you know, to be best for the team. You're not going to see him in a walking boot doing this crap. Now, that does not preclude anyone from being great. Micah Parsons is a phenomenal football player with a podcast, as an example. Travis Kelce, phenomenal football player with a podcast, as an example. Having said that, for the rookie quarterback coming into the league, we just talked about Travis Hunter and branding. There, if you make it and you are a great quarterback, there's all the time in the world for that. But Joe Flacco is a no-nonsense, this is what it takes to be good in the league. And I'm hoping that whoever they draft sits there and goes, man, there's a lot of things I can pick up with it in terms of study habits and all those things, like even diet.
Yep.
Joe Flacco's got to have a pretty good diet to be still doing this at 40 years old. He can take him pickleballing. I don't give a shit. But there's a lot to be gained from, just the being able to stick around in the league that long. Like, for example, I love Abdul Carter, but my man's talking about eating McGriddles. If he gets drafted by the Browns, we got to fix that. That's another element. Now, the last thing that I think is really important and will ease your nerves a little bit is the Kenny Pickett angle. By signing Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett gets to be a curiosity in the sense that whether it's you go up to training camp or you're reading about it, or you go into a preseason game and you go, Kenny Pickett's going to go on the field, and you're sitting there. There's a part of you going, oh, I want to see what Kenny Pickett can do. And if he's good, you sit there and go, great. We found a quarterback that can be good. And if he's not, you go, well, he's the backup. If he comes in and we need him to, get us through a couple games, hopefully he can do that. But Joe Flacco makes it so you're not sitting there going, if you suddenly, if we're, OTAs or whatever, and the media has been there and they're going, I don't know about Kenny Pickett, and you were talking about the starter, you're immediately going, oh crap. You know what I mean? And that's real. That's, again, the perception of Joe Flacco having credibility is important from that. So it allows Kenny Pickett to be what he is, which is a guy who's trying to prove that he's good enough to start in the league, but might just be a good backup for you and a good person that you can keep around for a few years. And if he's not, he's on the last year of his deal, they can move on. So I think those are all elements that make this a good move. Now, having said that, we could be in a month, Joe Flacco's arm could fall off, and we could be right back in the Kirk Cousins sweepstakes here. But for right now, the element with Joe Flacco that I think is important is, again, the thing that people are bringing up with Kirk Cousins is, oh my God, I don't think he can throw like that anymore. What happens if he gets the AFC North? At least with Flacco, even if it was 2 years ago, you at least can sit there and go, I saw him do it in Cleveland. I saw him do it in the AFC North weather. I've got that little bit of, that feeling that I've seen it work. I know he can do it. I'm less nervous about work. Even if you got Kirk Cousins, I think there are going to be people who are going to be sitting there going, it looks great in August. What's going to happen in November and in December? What is his arm going to look like when he's got to go to Pittsburgh?
Yeah. He also brings just a general good feeling around the organization from when he was here, and they can use that right now, certainly. Absolutely, at all times. Yeah,
and he's not, again, given what we just dealt with. There's no nonsense with Joe Flacco. Right. He's a net positive to your locker room. He's great with the media. The media will embarrass themselves slobbering over Flacco when he gets back into town, because they absolutely were gobsmacked with him when he was here before. And obviously that will change if he goes out and plays like crap after a while, but you can see the little sparkles in their eyes as they gaze upon this 6'6" man. And look, I poke fun, but there is a value to that in the sense that they're not sitting there going, with Deshaun, where, there's so many things that they would like to be able to ask him, but can't, or they're asking him, but he doesn't want to answer, or it's a conversation about all the things that aren't working. There's a little bit of a grace period that Joe Flacco gets you. But again, the locker room element is huge. Those things are not things that we're going to necessarily see from the outside, but may be important on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to some of this video real quick on Flacco and the Browns with NFL insiders, courtesy of the Rich Eisen Show.
who, let's be honest, a couple of years ago, we probably would have thought Joe Flacco would be on the golf course right now instead of signing on for another season at age 40. What does it tell you? What do you anticipate in Cleveland?
So this, to me, the signing of Joe Flacco for $4 million, actually $3 million is kind of the real deal. That's the guaranteed portion of it. It's basically like the Giants signing Russell Wilson, right? Which is like, and the Giants signed Russell Wilson, and it was immediately known, all right, hang on. They have a quarterback, but it's not like this guy's in place of any other quarterback. So might they still draft one? Maybe. It just means they don't have to take one if they don't want to. I would say the exact same for the Cleveland Browns, right? I mean, they now have Kenny Pickett. They have Joe Flacco. Also have Deshaun Watson, who we know is not going to play for them. But, like, they have a quarterback room now, and that's basically it. To me, this doesn't mean they're not going to draft a quarterback somewhere. Like, if the right quarterback is there at the top of the second round or early in the first round, or even if it's at 2, which sort of it looking increasingly less likely, but who knows, they could take one without having to reach. That's what this kind of means. It's like you'd like to go into the draft knowing that you could field a team right now, and at least the Cleveland Browns can field a team. I would say the only thing where it sort of really, really, really matters is maybe they don't trade for Kirk Cousins now. And, like, I thought they were one of the teams that might end up doing it. This sort of takes that place. So it's really like, what does it mean for Kirk Cousins rather than, like, what does it mean for the Browns? Because to me, it's the Browns, like, okay, they got a veteran quarterback. Fine, he's probably the backup.
Well, and part of
So that's interesting how he says that, right? It's more about what it means for Cousins than the Browns. Does it for you? Does it for you take like, does it take Cousins completely off the table? I mean, it has to for now, right?
Well, I mean, yes and no. Yes, if Joe Flacco can be what they need him to be, and again, his arm doesn't just fall off in a couple weeks once they start throwing, then yeah. But having said that, if, like, Joe Flacco is jogging in the field and suddenly goes down grabbing his knee, they're out $3 million and they can go and still get Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, they can still be an option, but no, I think the goal here is to not have to go down that road. I think the Browns are content to avoid dealing with what has sort of been an erratic negotiating partner on that front with too many moving pieces. The Falcons being one of them, and then Kirk Cousins being another. There are too many variables there that are trying to get aligned. The Falcons are sitting there going, we want real draft capital, and maybe we even want you to take money. And then Kirk Cousins is like, well, maybe I'll waive my no trade clause, and maybe I won't. Like, this eliminates all that mess and avoids the Browns putting themselves in a position they don't want to be put in, where they are now out leveraged. And just now all the pressure is sort of on the Falcons. Now the Falcons have said all along, hey, we're perfectly content to keep Kirk Cousins on the roster as insurance. And Kirk Cousins himself does not want to stay there. So that's its own interesting element. But if the Falcons are content to have him as an insurance policy, hey, we're going to find out, because all of a sudden everybody's sitting there going, ooh, cagey play by the Falcons, going, they can sort of wait this out and they're going to get a buyer, and they may still, but there's certainly a world where they sit there and they pay him $40 million to be the backup and not give them anything.
Suddenly it feels like the Steelers are like the closest maybe to making a deal for him. As you know, they're the only team really without a quarterback left, although I do think that Aaron Rodgers is inevitable, at least to some degree. It's interesting.
Until they get
the Saints too now. Which is such a weird thing. We should talk about that real quick. So I didn't think anything of it, Pete, with the whole Carr, his shoulder injury out of nowhere, right? And I was watching a show. I wish I had the clip for it now, but they were talking about who was it? I'll think of it. It was NFL Network, and what's the woman reporter that does all the analytics?
Oh, Cynthia Freeland?
Not her. Shoot. That's who it is. But anyways, and they were basically saying like, there's something fishy around this whole thing with Carr. Like it does something feels off. Like is he like he's not really hurt or something? Do you think there's anything to that?
I have no idea as far as whether or not he's hurt. The thing that has been reported is or I should say, there's conflicting reports. There's been talk that he's going to miss a whole bunch of time, and then there's people saying, well, he might not miss any time. So who knows? And so I don't want to speculate on any of that stuff, but I guess to my view, at some point, if you're the Saints, just unless you love one of these quarterbacks, just bite the bullet and just sort of let this cap situation work itself out, build the rest of the team, and then go back for the quarterback once the cap has sort of filtered out the amount of mess you've got to deal with. Build the rest of the team. Yeah. You're going to be bad. At least if you're going to be bad, do it with a purpose. In this case, to potentially end up at the top of the draft while sort of moving on from so much of this cap and giving Kellen Moore, as much as Kellen Moore probably doesn't want to go in there and lose, that may be unavoidable, and just sort of take this season for what it is and do it that way. But I don't get the sense the Saints are willing to go that route at this point. We'll see if they, obviously when 9th pick goes in, we're going to find out. If they don't take Jackson Dart or Shedeur Sanders, I think of those two, it's more likely Dart. But if they don't take them and they take, an edge rusher or something else, then all of a sudden, then they are in the market for maybe they're going to do what the Browns are essentially going to do, which is take a guy either in the second or maybe trade back up into the first round and then potentially still take a shot next year, depending on how things go with it.
Ultimately, how does that make you look at the Browns season?
Which one? How does what?
Like we kind of compared ourselves a little bit to the Saints there, and like they're in the no, but I just as far as like the quarterback room, right? And,
I mean, look, I think the Browns I don't think the Browns can afford to just be going to the season and be like, well, we're just going to roll them out there, lose, and go. I think there's too much to lose. Kellen Moore does not have nearly as much to lose in that standpoint. He's sort of inheriting the situation. Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry have done a lot of good things, but they've also made this mess themselves. Now, Jimmy Haslam may have helped with the contract and everything else, but like that's the difference. Kellen Moore has sort of a grace period. Mickey Loomis might be in trouble, and that may be why they ultimately force an issue that they otherwise shouldn't. But Kevin Stefanski, to me, cannot afford to go into this season and have a terrible year, because I don't think the locker room will stick with him in no small part because a lot of the guys that were there through the wars where they were good and made the playoffs multiple times will be gone. Myles Garrett will still be here. Denzel Ward may still be here. But most of those veterans, Wyatt Teller may be still here. Jack Conklin, we'll see if they resign him, those type of things. But like the roster will have turned over to a point where they won't have the guys that have sort of gone to battle with him in those cases. Now, maybe they still like him, maybe they won't, but like going from 3-14 to say, 5-12 may ultimately have those guys sitting there looking around going, what the hell are we doing?
Right.
So I just don't think the Browns can afford to be that bad again for both Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. And again, ownership is going to weigh in how they view the situation. But I think ownership is more invested in this group than the locker room is at this point. That's not to say that I think the locker room is a problem. That is to say that if they have another awful season, then I think it will become a problem.
Yeah. To your point, though, a lot of this locker room will turn over naturally at some point, and To me, Jimmy made it sound like these guys were safe. Now, if you have to live through this again, as safe as he wants to say they're safe, if you have to live through 3 wins again, that's a different reality we're talking about actually living through.
Well, and again, if you watched last season, yeah, I get it. 3-14. They put terrible quarterbacks out there at the end of the year. You could watch that defense and go, man, these guys play hard. Like you could see it and go, these guys are playing hard. They're trying to get better. They're playing like they're trying to make the playoffs. If we are sitting here in another year where potentially the last 4 games don't mean anything, and guys are playing a lot like the Jets did at the end of a couple years, then that's where you sit there and go, what are we doing? And that's where it becomes a really big problem for the coaches and everything else. And like I said, I don't want to get to that place. I want them to be playing meaningful football at that point. I want guys who are bought in because I do like what Kevin Stefanski can do as a head coach. I do believe Andrew Berry can be a very effective GM, but you just can't be that terrible. And hopefully Flacco can, whether he's going to get that 2023 magic going or not, hopefully he can lead them enough to win games and keep this team interested the whole way, as opposed to, fumbling on the 1 yard line against the Bengals. And it's just like, well, here it comes.
Yeah. Here is this is courtesy of 92.3 again. And Zach Jackson, who is always so chipper about the team, here talking about the Flacco situation real quickly. But he does make an interesting point that I wanted to kind of point to a little bit, that I have been pointing to kind of all off season, but we'll just look at it real quickly.
Any impact whatsoever on the quarterback selections in this draft class by the acquisition of Joe Flacco?
Zero. I mean, they have 2 inexpensive backup quarterbacks, both of whom are only signed through December, right? So it's kind of a blank slate. And my initial translation is that completely blank slate could forward to the draft, and it makes them more likely to take Jalen Milroe and just say, hey, he's got the highest ceiling. Let's see. In doing that, I thought, well, maybe it means they're going to take Tyler Shuck, who's just like Joe Flacco's nephew, right? Exact same player, 15 years difference. I don't know, but no, it zero affecting. What their quarterback plan A was, or even A and B, we will never know. It's pretty clear it was never to have Tyler or Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, right? But I don't think that either of those, or the order in which those went, affects next week whatsoever.
I agree with everything you said. I'd be absolutely floored if this team drafted Tyler Shuck. Anywhere. And I don't mean like he's sitting there in front 4. I mean at all. I'd be absolutely stunned. I do think that the Browns, I know the Browns really like Jalen Milroe. I mean, not a guess.
Yeah.
I know the Browns really like Jalen Milroe. I know the Browns really like Jackson Dart. I know the Browns really like a couple other quarterbacks. I've not heard that with Tyler Shuck, and nor should it. And to his point, he's right. I mean, they're going to be free agents after this year. The quarterback room is then going to be shaped around whoever they draft. If it's Dart, if it's Milroe, whoever. Depending on how those guys develop, obviously, they're going to have to then pivot. So yeah, I do think the Browns would love to end up with Jalen Milroe. I mean, I'm at the point now where even though I will actively concede that Shedeur Sanders is a better quarterback right now than right this second than both Dart and Milroe, I'm way more excited at the prospect of getting Dart and Milroe than I am Sanders, because Milroe could flame out and Dart could flame out spectacularly in 3 years. But to what you need to get out of that position, they have a chance to get to the highest levels. They have a chance they have things that allow them to be special, or to reach the top 12 level of quarterback play. Even Dart, I think that might be a little rich for him, but nevertheless. Whereas with Shedeur, I mean, even the people who love him are making these comparisons that just make me say ick. Lower end Kirk Cousins, Chad Pennington. Like,
That's crazy.
and I've met Chad Pennington, one of the nicest people you'll ever come across, but I don't want him in the first. I do not want him, the quarterback in this league at this point in a division where you've got to go against Lamar
You don't
Jackson.
think he can be better than Chad Pennington? Come on,
I do,
that's
but I'm
crazy.
saying these are the people who are saying no. This is Mel Kiper's comparison for Chad Pennington.
That's
for Shedeur Sanders.
insane.
And that's his number one quarterback, and he's going Chad Pennington is his comp. Like, you're
Yeah,
not
he might
winning
be
me
better
over
than
with it.
Pennington right now.
I don't know about that, but regardless, whereas, and again, so much of this is about, for me, is betting on the kid. And I as a kid, I would bet on Dart, I'd bet on Sanders, I'd bet on Milroe. But two of those three are built like guys who can be, have those high-end careers. Or in Milroe's case, he can walk in and be the best athlete in the field in any game he plays in. That is extremely tantalizing. Now, potential can get you fired, absolutely. But again, what are we looking for here? We are not looking to get, and this is one of the arguments I've hated this entire draft cycle. We've just got to get a decent quarterback. That's not what you're trying to get, and you will hate them the second you get them if they are just decent. We just did this with Baker Mayfield. People hated decent after a real short time. They want spectacular, and understandably, because that is what it takes. You need to be Josh Allen is spectacular. Lamar Jackson is spectacular. Neither of them have a Super Bowl ring. That is how difficult it is. That those guys are at the peak and they have not won a Super Bowl. But you're going to win with
to use your own point against you. Jalen Hurts is not spectacular, and he just won the Super Bowl.
Jalen Hurts can squat 600 pounds, and
he is not a spectacular quarterback. Me and you both.
I agree in the sense that he's not a great passer, but he can win you football games with what he can do. And the fact that he can, until they ban it, they've got a cheat code play where they can get they only have to get 9 yards, and on any 1st and 10 situation, they've just got to get 9 at this point. So he gives you a massive advantage from that standpoint. And what's interesting, even with that, is the person that Jackson Dart is often compared to, and I don't see it, but is Jalen Hurts. So whereas Kirk Cousins, if Shedeur reaches to the full potential of Kirk Cousins, he's everything Kirk Cousins ever was. 1 playoff win. 1.
Right. But here's what I'm saying, though. That's about his surroundings too. I mean, that's not just on Kirk Cousins, because Kirk Cousins was a top 10 quarterback year after year after year after year. That he was above average in the NFL for years.
No, it's disgusting because Kirk Cousins has a really strong case to make the Hall of Fame based on his numbers and efficiency and all these other things. Now, he should never ever get in, but no, I like that's the problem. Is one, I don't know if you. I think based on numbers, you can say he's been a top 10 quarterback. I don't know if anyone's ever really actually would ever believe
statistically
top 10 quarterback. But that's the problem, where you need to have a quarterback who can win you a game by themselves on some level. Kirk Cousins can't. I don't think Shedeur Sanders can either. For his point, I hope he proves me wrong. Yeah. But I watched him not do it at Colorado for 2 years. I don't think it's going to get better in the NFL. Whereas Jalen Milroe, whatever you want to say about him, and there are guys around him, he beat Georgia by himself effectively. He had some receivers that make some incredible catches, but he just said, I'm going to beat Georgia, and he did it because nobody could stop him. Shedeur has nothing like that. And obviously they are completely different styles of quarterback. But that's where you sit there and go, I'm going to bet on that guy.
Yeah, and I agree with you because Milroe, the kid in the ceiling is elite, and the kid, I agree with you about betting on the kid because he's special. His work ethic is out of this world. He's all that stuff. But where I have never wanted to take Shador at 2 because you can't, right? He's
Right.
not. At the same time, though, I don't want to sell him short to say that I don't think he can be a good quarterback in the league, because I do think he can be a very good quarterback in the league.
Entirely fair. And again, I was going to say, what was CJ Stroud's selling point? CJ Stroud was a pretty good quarterback prospect, and then everybody went to, oh my God, what did he do against Georgia in the national championship game, a game they should have won, could have won, with all those things. That's what got him to be that high a pick, was that spectacular level of ability that he could take over a game like that. So you've got to find guys who can do that. And, again, particularly Jackson Dart, he's got a lot to prove. But there's more with Dart and more with Milroe than Sanders for me. But
there's more. There's more there ceiling.
Yeah, there's just more upside, more. Yeah, no question. There's just the amount of talent, and I'm convinced, and I've been convinced this whole time. Everybody keeps talking about what Kevin Stefanski wants, the Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum type of quarterback. And I sit there and I look at this guy and I go, no, he doesn't. He's just able to get those guys to function at a really high level. What he wants is to take somebody who has Superman-like physical abilities and get him to do those other things and have the whole total package, because he's a coach, and coaches, especially offensive coaches, are greedy as hell. And you sit there and you go, I could get this out of Kirk Cousins in his very average physique, and I could get Case Keenum to be effective, and Baker Mayfield had the best season of his career with me. But man, if I can get, and Deshaun Watson was the shining example of what they thought they could do, and obviously were horribly mistaken. But I don't think that stopped them from going, I want to get that dude that can do all these things. And that's why I don't necessarily think they would take Jalen Milroe over Jackson Dart, though I could be wrong. But I think they really like the idea of getting Jalen Milroe.
So let me ask you this question then, because there was the whole Watson wasn't working. The offensive, turnover, the turning the offense into something different to fit him, that was a disaster. And now they're going back to what Stefanski is more inclined, or has ran more of his whole career. What do you do with Milroe then? When you can't just put him in the wide zone that Stefanski runs. It has to be a variant of that to some degree. And look at what an issue they had doing that with Watson.
So, they're going to use more zone concepts and probably get back into the wide zone and pin and pull stuff. But they're still going to run counter and power. They're still going to run trap.
Sure.
And as much as we want to make it about the passing game, it's really about the running game. And even with Dart, you can do this, but you can easily put Q counter in there. Put five guys out there, or do some RPO type element, or it's just counter blocking, 2 pullers, and go. He reads his block and goes. And that's, to me, passing game is so much easier to manipulate around a quarterback than running game. Your running game is your running game, because your passing game. Receivers, granted, have a certain skill set where they're going to thrive and things they do the best at. But in my experience, receivers will figure out how to make it work if it means getting the ball. You don't want to mess with the line. And that is where that became such a problem with what they were trying to do. And obviously they were pretty vocal about it this past year. But I think they can make that work in a way that's compelling and interesting. And I think Jalen Milroe can do some of the stuff, like the stretch play action stuff could be great for him. So much of that is really just about his development. But to your point, yes, there's a little bit of shift, but it's not so much shifting whole offense. It's shifting areas of the playbook where you're going to maximize, which they've done. They've done it with DTR. They did it with PJ Walker. They did it from Watson to Flacco. The biggest issue with Watson is he's just an endless whiner and entitled.
And he was terrible.
That he forced all these changes and did no work. Even though he's telling you now he's going to be better than ever, unless it means lying and defrauding people, then no, he's not. He doesn't want to work in a way that's going to be successful. Whereas, and Jalen Milroe will have to prove this if it's him or if it's Dart or it's whoever. He will have to prove that he's. But all indications are he's super motivated. All indications are he's working his butt off. Now, when the Browns, Tommy Rees obviously has a relationship with him, so there's a comfort level. But things could change. But ultimately, he's got to prove that he's willing to work in the offense that the Browns want to install or employ. And then maybe there's some subtle changes, but ultimately, I don't think it's a wholesale change. At least not yet.
Yeah. At some point, though, do you have to go full, Ravens, Lamar Jackson?
No, but if you want to do that, you certainly could. I just don't think.
Is that how you maximize him, though?
Only if you're really intent on going, full on rushing. And certainly if the Browns decide that they want to go 15 runs per game, 12 to 15 runs per game, then the world they could do that. However, with Kevin Stefanski, I don't think he'll ever make the wholesale change that the Ravens made. What I would think he wants to do, and what we might see over the course of this draft, if they get him, and then moving forward, is they're going to continue to add players that allow them to do both. In other words, that accordion effect. And we've seen Kevin Stefanski's loved this since he got here and has always been a big part of what he wants to do. He always wants the ability to play big personnel, and he always wants the ability to spread teams out and cause them all kinds of problems. So Kevin Stefanski's not bashful to put 5, 6, 7 linemen on the field if he can get, if they've interviewed basically every tight end on the planet so far. If they get another guy they like on that, or they get, they've got Tevin Jenkins and they've got Cornelius Lucas and they're probably going to draft another guy. If they want to put 10 linemen on the field with Milroe, so be it. They have that capacity. So I where the Ravens went and their basic offense became almost 3 tight ends. I don't think Kevin Stefanski will get that, but I do think he wants to get to a point where he can there could be a game, it could be a blizzard, it could be something like that, and they're just screw it. We're going to put Milroe and a running back in there, and this could be their red zone look. This is part of the reason I'm certainly intrigued by the idea of Milroe. You get him to the 10-yard line in the red zone, that should be his time. As much as I love Flacco, if they have Jalen Milroe, I would love nothing more than they get inside the 10-yard line and they're like, Milroe, get in there. We're going to run read option or some RPO stuff and just say, you're going to defend 11 on 11 and see if you can stop us. And most of the time it's either give or keep. And I think that would be highly successful and improve their red zone efficiency. These are all things that, if the Browns get Milroe, and they could do this with Dart too. Dart, not as twitchy, but he's a load when he gets going. These are fun conversations I look forward to having if and when they're able to draft one of these guys. Will Howard, to a certain extent, could do some of these things as well, just because of his size. But yeah, I think those are all things that make those even more appealing. Like Shedeur Sanders. Do I think Shedeur Sanders can keep the ball and running from the 5-yard line? Yeah, I do. But he's never. It's going to be more of a surprise subterfuge thing where, the defense basically doesn't account for him at all, and he's been able to walk in as opposed to Shedeur, get behind your pads and try to drive this thing. And I just don't think that's ever going to be what he does. So, when we get past the draft and we're talking about these things, then those are real interesting conversations to be had. And one of the appeals I have with Jalen Milroe, as much as I will sit here and tell you he should not be doing a whole lot in his rookie season, that is something I would like to see them do with him. He's almost 220 pounds. He's got 4.3 speed. He's got really good vision. Like that is and these are all reasons why I think I'm selling you as we speak. I think Brad Ward's coming on board. The idea of why, even though again, I will completely concede Shedeur Sanders is a better quarterback right now than Jalen Milroe. Those elements make Jalen Milroe more interesting to me as a guy to bring into the AFC North, as a guy to bring into the Cleveland Browns, as a guy to develop for Kevin Stefanski for the long term.
Serge saying the DTR package on
yes,
steroids.
Yes, exactly right. Even with DTR, who looked
They
like
did
a
that.
waif, they did it. They were not afraid to do it. And look, they should have. It was successful. How many fourth downs did they convert when his skinny little legs were pumping away and making a play? Like, I wish DTR all the best. I hope he's successful with the Eagles because I just genuinely like the kid, and I think he's got more talent than Browns fans do. But Jalen Milroe is 20 pounds heavier than him and infinitely faster. So yes, these are all things you're sitting there going, "What? We'd be foolish not to do this." Hell, I did the last mock draft I did. I gave the Browns a guy in the 6th round who is the epitome of Kevin Stefanski's shenanigans. His name is Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech. He has played. He has played. He's a tight end who has taken snaps under center and been a Wildcat and has thrown. So you can imagine the people just absolutely beside themselves if Jalen Conyers, this 6'4", 260-pound tight end, is in the game and throws a pass and it is picked off, or the other end where he throws a touchdown pass on some trick play. It's just the absolute full spectrum of the Kevin Stefanski creativity that could go super well or absolutely blow up in his face.
Yeah, he's super interesting. Do you think with the, you mentioned a moment ago that they have interviewed, if you remember at the OBR and you look at the Browns visit list that Pete has done such a good job with, they've interviewed a ton, or they've had visits with a ton of tight ends. Mm-hmm. And you think they will draft one, a good one?
I'd be stunned, but if they didn't draft a tight end, it's just a question of how the board falls. I would say, so normally I put visits in a couple of buckets. One, quarterbacks. The Browns are just going to get as much information on every quarterback as possible. Two, injury / character / just unanswered questions. The guys that they just want to learn more about for any number of reasons. Three, guys that are at the end of the draft that the Browns might be interviewing in case they are sitting there on day 3 and they're not sure if they're going to be able to draft them. And if they go undrafted, they want to be able to get a head start in recruiting. There's a linebacker who jumps out to me in that exact role that the Browns brought in several weeks ago. And then 4, the first round pick. That guy is going to, they want to know as much as they can because they're investing, if it's the number 2 pick, $40 million in that person. But the first round is the first round. You want to know as much as you can about those guys. But
sure.
Tight end is one where I could totally understand why the Browns would want to bring those guys in for visits because there are so many different ways teams utilize them in college with the amount of flexed guys, like a guy like Elijah Arroyo, who's basically never put his hand on the ground all that like at all.
Yeah.
Versus, some of the other guys who they haven't interviewed him, but Tyler Warren is an old school Y inline guy. And then there are guys who've done a little bit of everything. And especially for these guys who are out in space, you got to talk to these guys and get a feel for them. Are they really going to are they going to be willing to put their hand in the dirt and learn how to block and embrace that element of it? Or are they just, jumbo wide receivers? The amount that you put on the plate of a tight end and the intelligence of that, it becomes important because especially if you're the Browns, but increasingly a lot of teams, you're going to move them all over the formation. Y, flexed, F, all these different roles. Can they handle all that? So I think there's a benefit to just getting to know all those guys. So yes, Browns obviously view that position as a priority. Getting more help behind David Njoku. It's just such a valuable position in general. The amount of things it can cause problems for. And if Njoku's playing at a high level, it's only going to make their job easier. But they've talked to a lot of them, and a lot of them who are sort of these unfinished guys. Harold Fannin. He's actually played a decent amount of inline, but, nevertheless, I think the Browns want to.
What was he asked to do? Yeah. And
I mean, I think there's a question of what do you want these guys to do? And I would say that even though I do think it's a talented tight end class, after the top 2 tight ends, there's a pretty substantial gulf before you get to the next group, based on the stuff I look for. But, there's certainly a number of guys who could be pretty good players, like Mason Taylor. I know a lot of people like him. There are some people who suggested he's even going to sneak into the late first round. I think that's very rich, but there's not a whole lot of proof to that in terms of the things, elite production, elite athleticism, those type of things. So, we've got to see how the Browns come out with it. And depending on how the board falls, I mean, if we're working on the assumption that the Browns are going to take the best player on the board, be it Carter or Hunter at 2, I'd be really surprised. I mean, the board could fall very strangely and somehow they get shut out, but I'd be really surprised if 33 or that pick doesn't become another pick that then is used on the quarterback. And then that next pick, whether it's 67 or whatever is left after trading or something in that variation of, tight end is certainly in the conversation at that point, as is whatever they didn't take it to. Either they're going to need another edge rusher, in my opinion, or they're going to need another wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive tackle.
Yeah.
Those are all positions that are interesting. And the other one, they could be not sneaky because the Browns do have a hole there, but DB, specifically safety, I just don't love this class nearly as much as others do, I guess, or maybe that's a common view. I don't know. There aren't a whole lot of guys I like in this class, either corner or safety. And I would not be surprised if the Browns ultimately get shut out or take one late that's basically trying to be a role player. But yeah, I mean, once you get to the 3rd round and on, it's on. Oh, and running backs obviously got to come in there somewhere, hopefully 2 of them.
Yeah, or one in a UDFA. Ultimately, I think some guys will be left over. That's kind of what, with that late 7th round pick, you kind of got to view the board. There may be a couple guys that you like that are not going to get drafted. You know what I mean? And you might be able to get away with that. It's interesting about the tight ends, and but it's like you look at the guys coming out of college, and there's the guys that have done the inline stuff, and the guys that are the good blockers, and because a lot of the things in the NFL that they're asked to do now, as you said, in a lot of offenses, they're asked to move all over the formation, but they are in a lot of run games, they are critical to the run game. So you are asking them to do something. So to your point, like, you got to talk to these guys because it's easier to take an athletic pass catching guy and make him a blocker than it is make a blocker who is less athletic a pass catcher, right? I mean,
the Browns the Browns have a clear track record on this. They've never taken a blocking tight end ever.
Right.
They've never drafted one. They didn't even sign one as an undrafted free agent last year. They signed the kid out of Wyoming who is a receiver. They have always drafted receiving tight ends, or in one case, they took a big wide receiver and just said, screw it, we're making you a tight end, and Seth Devolve out of the Ivy League. But it's been Njoku, it's been Devolve, it's been Harrison Bryant, it's been those type of guys that they've always prioritized. And this year will be no different if they take one of those guys early. The Browns will say, screw it. If I'm going to take somebody who's going to be primarily a blocker, I'll take a lineman. And frankly, I approve of that strategy. I don't see nothing against blocking tight ends. I think they're valuable, but I'd rather just put a guy in a 60s or 70s jersey out there and say, not pretend that I'm going to throw him the ball, or put a skill number on him. I don't care. But let's, for that position, the guys who are special because they can catch the ball and make plays.
Yeah.
Blocking tight ends are good, but you can always put another lineman out there, and the lineman has more versatility in the fact that he can play line. You're not going to ask your backup tight end to go, get some reps at tackle. So I absolutely approve it, but they've got a clear track record on that front. So if you're sitting there going, man, I hope the Browns take like CJ Dupree from Alabama, I'd be really surprised if they go that route. So, or the kid from Georgia Tech, Hawes. Either Hawes or Dawes. But regardless, even the guys you're seeing them interview are those receiving types. Harold Fannin, Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, those type of guys. Like stranger things can happen. I'm not sure the Browns would love Tyler Warren. I certainly don't. Whereas I think they would have, given the opportunity, I think they would absolutely love Colston Loveland. So it's anyone's guess. I mean, maybe Andrew Berry will be asked about it and comment, since it's not likely they're going to end up with either one. But they're going to try to get receiving guys first and say, we'll teach you how to block.
100%. You're watching The React. That's Pete Smith. My name is Brad Ward. We've talked Travis Hunter, ultimatum. We've talked Flacco being back, which is something to get excited about. The draft is something to get excited about. Next Thursday, we will kick off coverage at 7 on Thursday, which is when me and Casey go on normally for All Eyes on Cleveland, but we'll just kick it off with the little pre-draft action. We've got a couple bets going on in the first round there. One that includes eating spam. So we'll do that for an hour leading up to the pick. And we'll have you covered from the beginning all the way to the end of the draft. 3 full days here on the OBR streaming network. All right. Final video of the night, because Garage Beers is next, but I want to get to this. It is interesting. The premise, we always go to Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. This is courtesy of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. This is, did the Browns lie to Myles Garrett about the quarterback position? Ultimately, I don't really care what they told Myles Garrett, but it does bring up the question, like, what was plan A, I wonder? And we can talk about that in a minute.
Rumors of champs, and let's dive into our first topic of the day. Our first topic is brought to us by Nissan. The plans at quarterback. Signed his record-breaking extension with the Cleveland Browns. He was asked by Andrew Siciliano on a podcast about the plans at quarterback and whether or not that played a role in him signing an extension with the Browns. In case you forgot exactly how that interaction went, here is the clip from the podcast with Myles talking to Andrew Siciliano about the Browns' future quarterback plans.
In all seriousness, do you know who the quarterback's going to be? I mean, do you have an idea?
After conversations, I do have an idea.
Okay. Do you like the idea?
Gave it up right there. That's the whole thing.
I like it enough to
he had no idea.
Be here smiling in front of you because I think we have a good chance of that happening and making the most out of it.
Can you tell us who it is, Myles?
Kenny Pickett.
I can't do that.
So, G. Bush, at the time of that conversation, do you believe the Browns had told Myles Garrett that the plan at quarterback was going to be Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco? Or do you think circumstances have changed, and that is how we have ended up with the Pickett-Flacco quarterback room?
This is a tricky little question because I think he might have been just playing around a little bit. They might have told him. He gave him a ballpark idea of who's going to be the quarterback. But when it comes to Flacco, I think they did tell him it was going to be him. At that time, I don't think the Browns were in with any other quarterbacks. They didn't have enough cap space to get a lot of people. And they probably told him, look, Kirk Cousins is a long shot, but here's what we're going to do. Hey.
I don't think there's any chance in hell they told him they were leaning Flacco at that point. Do you?
No, there's not. No, listen.
No.
He gave it up. He goes, do you have an idea? Yeah, I have an idea. You know why? Because he wasn't pitched a name. He was pitched an idea. He was pitched, hey, we're going to try to do this. We're going to try to get the best, something along the lines of, we're going to try to get the best veteran we can, and we're going to draft somebody. And that's basically all because Andrew Berry is not stupid enough to go, hey, we're going to do this, knowing he can't control the situation. Like, even if he said Shedeur Sanders, he couldn't guarantee it at that time. There was some possibility, however remote, the Tennessee Titans could take him because they have the second pick of the draft. Andrew Berry's not that stupid. Myles Garrett is not that stupid, and he's smart enough to answer it in a way to say, to make it sound like he's in on it, that does exactly what the dream for the Browns marketing department and their social media to be able to post this clip and people to buy it in the same way that I've had any number of people try to suggest that the Journey concert means that the Browns are going to select Shedeur Sanders, or what's left of Journey, is meant that they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders. Of course not. They're not going to pigeonhole themselves into anything when they can't predict the future. So no, they did not do that. He gave him a broad vision of what they were going to try to do, and he's basically the same thing he's told the media.
Yeah, so this whole thing is crazy. All right, so after this, he went on the radio, and he maybe before, whenever, he was on CBD, Cleveland Browns Daily, and he got pressed on the same thing, and he ultimately made it sound like he said kid like 10 times, or young kid. He referenced like a young quarterback like 20 times. For sure made it sound like at the time they were going to draft a young quarterback, which they still may, but not in the same premise that maybe he thought at that time. I don't know what they told him. I don't think it really matters. But it's just funny that it's Flacco and Pickett now. And like, you're like, and while I love Flacco, it's just funny that that's what it was. And you have him grinning like he knew who it was. Oh, knew it's going to be Kenny Pickett. And I love that idea.
Miles, you went to the play.
It's selling. It is selling, marketing, and it worked great. Like, it got them a fun news cycle for their social media department. It got them a fun news cycle for that YouTube show. It got fun news cycles for CBD. Like, it's a 1,000% success with no stakes attached, zero. And the thing is, like, I'm honestly surprised this was brought up because I thought most people had sort of forgotten about it. But
I had,
like, this is one of those things where, in the same way that, how many people are still talking about all the contract controversy? Anyone? No, I didn't think so. That stuff just goes away so fast; it doesn't matter. But it was successful for what it was at the time, and that you just roll with it.
So ultimately, my question, and it was something Brian Hoyer said today on the radio that kind of made me think of it, because he was like, "This couldn't have been their plan A, and it couldn't have been their plan A."
No.
What do you think
We
their
know,
plan
we
A
know
was?
it wasn't plan A because we know some of the guys the Browns were talking to.
Right. But
the Browns had obviously had interesting guys like what's his face who went to the Colts?
Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Daniel Jones. They had interest in. They at least considered the idea of going after Justin Fields once it became apparent that he was going to get on the market. That didn't go anywhere because he was done so fast. And in both cases, the Browns were not willing to make them promises that those two teams were. So ultimately, it wasn't going to happen. But those were guys that they were more interested in initially. If the Browns were this interested in Joe Flacco, it wouldn't be done in April. It would have been done in March. That is clearly a product of, we didn't know where this thing would end up, and we're sort of backing into it. And even from that standpoint, if this is sort of like your fallback position, it's not the end of the world. but it's certainly not the first plan. It's not the second plan. It may not be the fifth plan, but ultimately you're still in a position where Joe Flacco can do what you need him to do, hopefully. But again, the credibility element's big, but no one can be serious and go, yeah, Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett's where they want to end up. Now, the Kenny Pickett part, they may have really wanted Kenny Pickett all along and really liked the opportunity that presented them. But everything else, no.
Madness. All right.
Playoffs one time, right? Couple times. The one time that you went to the playoffs, it was with Joe Flacco. How did you like him? You guys had fun at the end of the season. He's a professional. He's a good locker room person. You ain't gonna have no problems, with no turmoil. And look, you saw what the offense looked under him. And I also think they said Flacco will get that done, and then we're going to get a quarterback in somewhere within the first 2 rounds. A young quarterback. I think they probably told him who they were going to go after in terms of a young quarterback, and I think they did set it up. I think they did go after Flacco. They could have went after some other guys, but I think, what I said before, they're looking for familiarity. They're looking for people that's a little comfort zone for people. Flacco just had some recent success. They grabbed him and they said, listen, we'll just go get a rookie quarterback. And this way, the rookie quarterback does not have to play immediately, so you don't have to be out there breaking your neck and going through these growing pains. We got a veteran. You get a rookie for the future. We can groom him slowly. But in the meantime, we're going to get you a guy like Travis Hunter that'll help you on defense and help the offense. So here you go. How you feel about that, Miles? And then they said, he's like, I give it a C+. And they're like, how's about this $50-60 million up front today? He was like, okay, I'll take it. I'm satisfied.
Yeah, you saved the best part for last.
There it is.
What did he like about their conversation? $40 million per year.
Yeah, the zeros.
Okay.
What were you saying about the contract? These guys never forget.
Like, he lost. Like, I mean, he won in the sense he's going to get $160 million. But the guy on the left said that the Browns folded. They did not. And everything you're seeing is playing out right now is proving that point. Jamar Chase got more than him. TJ Watt is doing this on Instagram because he's not happy. Micah Parsons isn't done, and Jerry Jones is insulting his agent, which did not go over well. The Browns won the negotiation. Like, that is and Myles Garrett is getting paid handsomely, and he should. But like, that's a dub for the Browns on that one, because if this had gone into June and July, like, it is long enough ago. We're barely, we're being reminded of it, but it's been so long ago, and Money in the Bank, that like all the focus has been on everything else, which is exactly what the Browns wanted. Hence it being a big dub. But no,
Andrew Berry did not tell going on right now.
Andrew Berry did not tell Myles Garrett or who they were targeting at quarterback. Andrew Berry, they're deciding who they're going to take second pick this week. They sure as hell didn't telegraph over a month ago which quarterback they were going to go after in round 2 when they hadn't done any of the homework yet. Now, Andrew Berry may have been reasonably convinced of who he really liked at that point, but they're still not going to do that because, again, they can't guarantee anything. So they're not going to sit there and in a weird world where if everything goes wrong and like Shedeur goes 3 and Jackson Dart goes 9 and Jalen Milrose gone at 21, and they're left there holding the bag and going, well, I told Myles that we're going to do X. I better give up more picks to get ahead. Like, come on. This is not how any of this works. And again, the Browns won that negotiation. Myles Garrett was starting to realize how badly this was going for him. Everything he was trying was not working. And he made the Browns look like the adults in the room, which is never where you want to be with the Browns. Usually it's always the opposite. Jimmy Haslam, to his credit, handled it really well by backing Andrew Berry. They got the deal done basically at the exact number Jack Duffin had them at. And if he had them nailed down on the number, they certainly didn't win the contract. They got exactly what was expected. But yes, the only thing I will concede on that is that was ultimately what Myles Garrett was happy about. Had 160 million reasons to be really happy. It wasn't about the quarterback plan. He was getting broad strokes. Do I think, I'm hoping given what I've heard from what the Browns want from Myles Garrett in terms of being a better leader and all these other things, I'm hoping that Myles Garrett sort of, in the way that we've talked about before, being not only the voice of the locker room, but also in some ways the voice of the collective fan, being that instrument of change and being like, basically knock this stupid crap off. Did Myles Garrett go into Jimmy Haslam and these people and say, hey, listen, you've got to stop with the Deshaun Watson nonsense? And did that lead him to make the statement he did at the league owners meeting? I doubt it, but still, he could have gone in there and been like, "This he doesn't want to do it." The locker room has no faith in him whatsoever. Let's not pretend this is a thing anymore, and let's move on. And some other grievances, on the other hand, along those lines, to then have them push back and go, "Well, we need you to be a better leader than you've been." And the thing I would be very curious about on that whole front, given what Jason Lloyd reported, and I have no reason to doubt his reporting on that, even though I've heard some small pushback on it from sources within the OBR. I cannot help but wonder if Myles was not far more engaged the year before, that this was a product of the way the season was going. Yeah. Either way, it's not good. Either way, it's something that needs to be addressed and rectified. But I would hope that in 2023, when he was on the way to win Defensive Player of the Year, and to my opinion, should have been in the MVP conversation, that was Myles Garrett fully locked in the whole way, that we get back to that, and that's part of the reason that they are going to be better this year.
I think a lot of it has to do with unfortunately, I think.
Energy vampire, just suck the life out of everything, including anyone who turns on any of his workout videos or sees his tweets. Just, I'm going to be back better than ever. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Better than ever. I mean, better than what you were in Cleveland, not a difficult task.
Yeah. You had mentioned you don't think the Browns know who they're going to pick yet. Is that commonplace, you think? Wouldn't you think an NFL team knows by now?
Depends. With Myles Garrett, when they actually picked him and obviously there were different people in charge, Sashi was here. They picked that decision was made at the combine. They were done.
Sure.
This year, with Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter and the different dynamics they could play out, I totally get why they'd want to, and to use Barry's terms, use the whole shot clock. I don't have a problem with that. I think there are times when it's far more obvious, and don't pretend. I mean, but I don't have a problem with them going down the wire on this thing and getting all the information possible, and then taking a week's worth of meetings to sort of, and it's obviously that one may not take very long. I don't know one way or the other, but it's everything else. It's setting up the whole board. Their process is they're taking this a whole week's worth of meetings to get this whole thing ready.
To the whole board, yeah, I get that.
Board and the thought process and how they're going to approach this and everything else to get everybody on board and understanding what it's going to look like.
Yeah, and they have to simulate all the different scenarios that could potentially play out and how they're going to react to them and all that stuff, right? So
potentially, yeah. I mean, I think you have, like, God knows, looking at the Ask Insiders forum, the amount of what ifs we get in terms of the quarterbacks and how they come off the board, I have no doubt that they are having to ask themselves, hey, what if, Shedeur comes off the board at 3, or, those pivot points, 3, 9, 21. Yeah. Is there a wild card in there somewhere? Like, if, A and B come off the board here, where do we have to get to make sure we get C? What are we willing to pay to get there? Have we had those conversations? Do we have a team that's sort of responsive to that? A lot of those conversations, like, because they're not calling up the day of the draft and going, hey, we're going to hash this thing out. It can happen.
Let me get my chart out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they've had, they strike me as, and I've heard him mention it before about, the playing the scenarios out in a multitude of ways, so they're prepared on draft day and how the board falls. But yeah, that's interesting. You think about, what are we going to pay if we want to look to get this? What are we looking to get? Here's, what do we want to get accomplished? Here's our board. You know what I mean? All this stuff. But like at the same time, you would think at 2, like Andrew Barry knows who he wants at this point. Like when he walks into that meeting room, like I doubt he's going in there and getting swayed by somebody else.
Yeah, I mean that part I would tend to agree with. I'm sure he's got his sort of personal choice. Now that may still not be the one they ultimately pick, but yeah, I expect that bias is sort of in there one way or the other. The way he feels going into the meeting, I mean, it's possible that they're close enough where something small could change it, but I doubt it. I think they're largely hardened on that. But the other thing that hopefully will work in Andrew Berry's experience with this is this will be his 5th draft. And drafting is a huge part of drafting is the experience of having done it.
Yeah.
And hopefully that experience pays off. The last 2 drafts have been arguably his best without all the premium picks. Other than that, you have to go back to 2021 when they got Newsom and JOK. But with limited assets, they've done 2023. They did really well. 2024 looks pretty good thus far in terms of return on at least,
early return.
Yeah, I mean, with the defensive tackles problems aside, those are real and have to be taken care of. But the return on those 2 gives them a lot of promise going forward and can put them in a really good spot.
Yeah, for sure. Mike Hall looks like a stud. Briggs looks like a steal. Yeah. So, and you got another super deep class at edge and defensive tackle, although edge may be off that list pretty early.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, if they, I'm hoping that whether it's Abdul Carter or something else, they're going to come out with an edge and a defensive tackle on looks last. If those picks are good, they will have, the vast majority of the defensive line room will be extremely young, and many of them will be on their rookie deals still.
It strikes me that they probably have too many guys there right now. They're paying money to.
Some of those guys will not be here,
right?
But yeah, they want to keep adding and keep getting better and not put themselves in a position. And that's where Hall and Briggs have the opportunity to be a massive bridge for them, because they were in this weird trap where they were doing the whole thing of cycling through these 30-plus-year-old veterans, and it was working, but you don't want to live like that. So yeah, other than Nick, do they have any free? I mean, Elijah Moore's still out there. Nick Chubb is still out there.
Safety
is the other one that they would like to get done. Now, will any of those get done before the draft? To be determined. Personally, if I'm a wide receiver or a running back, I'd probably want to get signed before the draft. Safety, I think you're pretty good to be patient, because I don't think a lot of teams are going to have answers, and your value is going to maintain through that. But wide receiver, and especially running back, I'd want to get on a team quickly, because especially running back, you're going to have the more time you have to draft guys. But if Chubb's not on this roster and I've drafted 2, I'm also recruiting an extra guy who's not a drafted rookie and seeing what he can do. And if he's great, then, I got to move on. Whereas I can't wait on Nick Chubb forever. And if he's not great, well, at least I can still revisit that. But I would not want to be in a situation where I'm potentially now sitting here on the outside looking in and waiting for an injury before I sign with the team.
100%. All right, folks. One more show before the draft. We're almost there. 2025 Draft Cave. Keep it locked here. Hit the notification bell so you know every time we go live. So you get every one of our shows leading up to the draft. We got you covered from A to Z, from pick 1 to 2, whatever it is. How many are there? 256? Something like that.
What's up?
How many picks are there in the draft? Do you know?
256.
Boom. Nailed it. 1 to 256. We got you covered on the OBR streaming network. Any parting words tonight, Pete? Tim Alcorn is on Garage Beers next. If you want to get ready for Cavs playoffs with the Garage Beers folk. They'll be up here at 9 o'clock. But parting words, Pete?
Yeah, subscribe to the OBR. Support us as much as you can. Reading, watching, all that stuff is certainly great. Subscribers, that's the best way to help us, and telling a friend. But be ready to tune in for the draft stuff. For those who were there last year, even without a first-round pick, we were all over it. Will be no different this year in terms of from day one to from pick 1 to pick 256, and then all the analysis, especially on those if they don't do any trades, 5 guys that they'd be picking at the end of the draft, where you're going to go to a lot of outlets and they're going to be sitting there Googling them. We'll be able to tell you who they are and what they're going to what we think they're going to do right off the rip, and then get right into the undrafted rookies, which would be really, really interesting this year, especially if we don't see a flurry of signings before the draft, because I think the Browns are going to take full advantage of those roster spots as they have in years past. And UDFAs has been a big part of their strategy and bolstered the team. It has added players to their draft, whether it was Ronnie Hickman and Mahmoud Diabate adding to that 2023 class, which already did well, getting that extra value, which feels like extra draft picks.
They have 10 picks currently, right?
Yep.
How many do you think they take? 8?
I suspect 10, maybe more.
More?
I mean, if they trade, obviously, if they trade up to get a quarterback, it's probably going to be around 7 or 8. But listen, if they had more, I sit here as somebody, even as I appreciate what Kenny Pickett might be able to do, I'm still bitter about that 5th round pick. I would like to have that pick back. So there are more than enough spots. There are more than enough spots where I can find picks. I could pick guys for quite a while. There are some undrafted free agents I'm already looking at for this team that I'll be curious to see if they go after. Safety from Wyoming or Rutgers as an example. That's how deep I will be into this thing. So I'm hoping I would love more picks, but we'll see what they end up with.
Yeah, 104 to 179. We kind of talked about there's some value there, and it would be hard to imagine they go that whole period without making a pick. So I'd like to see them move around and get in there, right? So with that, get your beers, head to the garage. Tim Alcorn, Mike, and the boys are up next. Keep it locked to the OBR streaming network. Hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell. Be ready for Draft Cave 2025. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Have a wonderful evening. We are out.